E como mai. Welcome, everyone. Today we'll be looking at fish that say aloha. I'm your presenter today. My name is Judith Cucco. I'm a volunteer with Reef, and I'm proud to say that I've completed more than 1,000 fish and turtle species and abundance surveys. Next. This is what we're going to cover today. First, I'll be telling you a little bit about what is Reef. We'll look at ocean etiquette, 15 fish that divers and snorkelers often see in the Hawaiian Islands. This data is selected from surveys submitted by reef divers and snorkelers. I would encourage you to grab some paper for notes and to find the chat to type your answers for 2 short reviews if you're watching during the original broadcast. Next. What is Reef? Reef stands for Reef Environmental Education Foundation. It's an international marine conservation organization that implements hands-on programs to involve local communities in conservation-focused activities. Its mission is to protect biodiversity and ocean life by engaging and inspiring the public through citizen science, education, and partnerships with the scientific community. The main projects are the Volunteer Fish Survey Project, which I participate in, the Grouper Moon Project, the Invasive Species Program, and the Explorers Education Program. Next. Now for a little bit of ocean etiquette. Coral is an animal. Yes, it is alive. Don't touch, step on it, or sit on it because you will kill it. Stay at least 10 feet away from turtles, whether on land or in the water. Use a reef-safe sunscreen if you must use it. It's better to use a long sleeve rash guard. Now let's watch a public service announcement from the Friends of Hanauma Bay.
Tourism is Hawaii's #1 industry, and we are very grateful to have visitors come from all over the world to enjoy our beaches and the rest of our natural resources. However, the marine environments around an island are very fragile, and so the more visitors that we have, the more of an impact they have on all of our beaches.
We started noticing declines in coral reefs around 1980, 1985, which is about the same time that personal care products like sunscreen lotion were used prominently by tourists going to these beaches and visiting these coral reefs. What we're doing is we're looking at oxybenzone, a common UV chemical found in many sunscreen lotions and aerosol sprays. Oxybenzone can cause an adverse effect in coral at 62 parts per trillion. That is equivalent to 1 drop of water in 6.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So you don't need a lot to cause a lot of damage.
The researchers that offered this revolutionary paper, they, in the lab, have seen that these compounds are lethal to coral larvae. It also sterilizes them, and it bleaches them at a lower temperature by 10 degrees. What that means is that if we lose a coral to bleaching, or if it's damaged just from climate change, it can't recover.
Corals are animals. They actually have a basic immune system that is a lot like humans. They react when they're being stressed out. They're white, they're stressed. It's a lot like us when we're sick. We're pale and we're not as healthy, and that's what's happening to the coral. I've worked the last nearly decade on coral health and disease. I never thought in my lifetime I would see reefs just completely wiped out by bleaching. The level of alarm that I have now is higher than I thought it would ever be. We lose those reefs, we lose a large amount of income from tourism, from biomedical products, from coastal protection, and really importantly to communities, from food.
Oxybenzone is a toxicant. It can cause harm to humans, it can cause harm to mammals, it causes harm to fish at particular concentrations.
As it relates to human health, these chemicals are linked to causing breast cancer to become more aggressive, polluting breast milk, causing Hirschsprung deformity in newborns, and associated with women's uterine diseases, threaten male sexual health, and can damage DNA. There's evidence that oxybenzone is even showing up in our aquifers and our drinking water.
What we put on our skin, it's going to wash off and it flows into the ocean, whether you're in the middle of the U.S. and the mainland or you're right next to the reef.
Mother dolphins are exposed all the time to oxybenzone because it's there polluting the marine environment. And when the mother dolphins breastfeed, oxybenzone that's contaminating the mother passes on to the baby.
Mr. President, I rise in strong support of the measure.
Please proceed.
Colleagues, this legislation is a big step forward for the protection of our coral reefs, marine life, and human health. It will be the first law passed not only in the country, but in the entire world, to ban sunscreens that contain the dangerous chemicals oxybenzone and octinoxate.
We have these global stressors that in the foreseeable future, they're not going away. Temperature is rising. We have increased CO2, ocean acidification. But there's the local stressors. And if we can minimize those, we give the corals a far greater capacity to respond, adapt, and survive. So what's the easiest thing you control? Don't put sunscreens that have harmful chemicals on them. You can just put on a long sleeve rash guard. You can use lotions that don't have that same impact. There's little decisions like that that if we all do, collectively is going to help this environment.
So just remember, it's a big no-no to step on the coral, and there are many small and easy steps we can take as individuals to protect our ocean, its inhabitants, and ourselves. Just do it. I personally don't care for sunscreen, so I wear a skin over my bathing suit. It provides excellent UV protection. Now let's dive into the fish. Each slide will have the fish family on top, species on the bottom, photographer on the left, and size in the lower right-hand corner of the photo. If it doesn't have the reef logo on the slide, I've added it. Where it's known, the Hawaiian name will be provided. Unfortunately, by the time anyone thought to record the Hawaiian names, much of the old knowledge had been lost. We'll start with the butterfly fish family. Why are they called butterfly fish? Because their tail looks like half of a butterfly wing. They have a line through the eyes, and many have a false eye spot near the tail. What's the purpose of the false eye spot? To confuse the predator. If the predator bites there, the scales and spines will be going in the wrong direction, making it tough to swallow. Next. This is the raccoon butterfly fish, known as the kikakapu in Hawaiian. Has anyone seen a raccoon on the mainland? They have masked eyes and they have a white curved bar behind the mask. Most butterfly fish swim in pairs, but the raccoon swims alone or in big aggregations. Next. The threadfin butterfly fish, also known as the kikakapu, I'm sure it had a variation from the raccoon in its original Hawaiian. Notice the eye bar. There's a filament off the dorsal fin, hence the name threadfin, and there's a false eye spot. Next. This slide has a good view of the threadfin filament. Next. The Moorish idol, known as the kihi, is its own family. It was the star in the movie Finding Nemo, and it's found all over the Pacific. Next. There's an orange saddle on the mask and a graceful trailing filament. Usually they swim in pairs or small schools. Next. You can see why it would be easy to confuse the Moorish idol with the pennant butterfly fish. Remember that the Moorish idol has the orange saddle on the mask. Next. Now let's look at the surgeonfish family. They're also known as tangs. Surgeonfish is the same thing as tang. Surgeonfish because a surgeon wields a scalpel, and a tang because one meaning of tang is the blade on a knife. Most spines are retractable. Next. Here's the convict tang, or manini, which means undersized or stingy. It's named after the prominent but parsimonious Spaniard, Don Francisco de Paula y Marin, who was a friend and advisor to King Kamehameha I. They carry two forward-pointing spines at the base of the tail, one on each side. They feed exclusively on fine filamentous algae. They are the lawnmowers of the reef. I've often seen schools of 100 to 300 individuals. Next. The brown or lavender surgeonfish is known as ma'i'i in Hawaiian. Research shows that they are the smartest fish on the reef. They have a large brain primarily to avoid predators. They must always know the locations of the nearest hiding places, and they must be able to navigate accurately and at speed if chased. Next. This is the most common surgeonfish. It's often overlooked because it's plain. This photo was taken with a flash, so you can see the dull orange spots on the head and the two dark spots at the base of the crescent-shaped tail above and below the scalpel. Next. Here we have the orange spine unicorn fish known as the uma'umale. Unicorn fish have two spines on both sides of the tail. Unicorn fish spines are not retractable, and they are very sharp. The long filamentous tail gets longer as the male fish gets older. It has a face like a baboon, and it looks like it has a lei around the neck, hence the Hawaiian name uma'umale. Next. Notice the long tail streamers in this photo. These fish can live to be 12 years old. When they're chasing other fish, their body darkens, the yellow mark on the forehead intensifies, looking almost like a headlight, and the pectoral fins turn yellow. Next. This is the orange band surgeonfish, or na'enae. It's unusual. They have an orange band ringed in blue on the side. The juveniles look like a yellow tang, but without the white spine. Next. The body can change color rapidly from entirely light olive to entirely dark, though a half and half pattern is the most common. This orange band surgeonfish is being cleaned by an endemic Hawaiian cleaner wrasse. Next. Now it's time for a quick review. So go to the chat if you're watching this during the scheduled time of the retreat. And if not, be ready to write down what you think your answer is as we go through. Next. That's the brown or lavender surgeonfish. The convict tang. Threadfin butterfly fish. Orange spine unicorn fish. Orange band surgeonfish. Moorish idol. Raccoon butterfly fish. Now let's continue to the next 8 fish. The damselfish family are small fish. They have 1 pair of nostrils, not 2. Next. This is the Hawaiian sargent, which is endemic. It's also known as the mamo in Hawaiian. Endemic means that it's found in just one particular region and nowhere else in the world. This male is guarding a purplish-red egg patch in the lower left-hand corner of the slide. It fans them and protects them from marauders who want to steal his eggs. It's not to be confused with the Indo-Pacific sargent. Next. The Indo-Pacific sargent arrived in Hawaii around 1990. It's bright yellow on the upper sides, and it has broad black bars, which are typically wider and extend further down the body than the Hawaiian sargent. Next. The Hawaiian gregory is endemic, and unfortunately we don't have a Hawaiian name for it. It used to be called the Pacific gregory, but was found to be endemic via DNA studies. It farms algae and removes undesirable coralline algae. It eats small invertebrates found on its farm, and it boldly defends its territory against other algae-eating fish. Next. It's often overlooked because it's plain but very common. Raising the dorsal fin indicates fright. Notice the yellow eye. Darkening the eye indicates aggression. Next. Now let's look at the wrasse family. They are known for their bright, gaudy color patterns that vary dramatically with age and sex. Most begin life as females, which is known as the initial phase. Late in life, a few transform into males with a different color pattern that is known as the terminal phase. Males hold a territory and spawn individually with numerous females in their territory. A group of females constitutes a harem. If the dominant male dies, The dominant female changes sex and takes his place. Once they change to the terminal phase, they can't change back. You can also see an endemic Hawaiian cleaner wrasse in this photo. Next. The the saddle wrasse, is also endemic. It's called the Hinalea lawili. It's the most common fish in Hawaii, with an orange saddle. The white bar indicates that it's terminal phase, or male. Notice the blue-green body with fine magenta vertical lines. Next. This is the bird wrasse, or Hinalea iiwi in Hawaiian. This is the terminal phase coloration, which is always male. Notice the dark green to intense blue-green with green bar above the pectoral fin. It has a long curved snout to wrest food, primarily crabs, shrimp, and brittle stars, from crevices in the reef. The snout looks like the beak of a bird. It's fast moving, and its pectoral fin strokes are similar to wing strokes of insects. Next. This is the initial phase bird wrasse. Usually most are born female, but a few can be born male. They have a whitish head and forebody with an orange wash along the top of the snout, and a brown body. Their body is brownish gray. Next. In the triggerfish family, we're only going to look at the reef triggerfish, which is common but not endemic. They have two dorsal spines. The first can be erected and locked in place internally by the shorter spine. It looks like a trigger. It is the state fish. It was made famous by the song Children Learn in School, also sung by Don Ho. I want to go back to my little grass shack in Kealakekua, Hawaii, where the humu humu nuku nuku apua'a go swimming by. Many years ago, the children wrote letters to the legislators to make it the state fish. The legislators granted it for 20 years since it isn't endemic. The next generation found out that it was no longer the state fish, so they wrote letters to the legislators, and now it's permanent. Next. The reef triggerfish has an arrow on its side, classic triggerfish nose, and a little bit of red on its side. Be careful if they're guarding their nest. They'll come charging right at you. My friend was bitten by one. If they look angry, which means that the trigger is raised, don't go near. Next. In the puffer family, we'll look at the Hawaiian white-spotted toby, which is also endemic, and we don't know what the Hawaiian name is if there was one for it. Notice the iridescent green eye and the clear fins. It is quite small, only 2 to 3 inches. Next. It can inflate, its skin is toxic, and as you can see, it isn't camera shy. Next. In the goatfish family, we'll start with the many-bar goatfish. All goatfish have barbels similar to a goat's beard. They use their barbels to taste the sand for worms, mollusks, and other invertebrates. All have a forked tail and 2 dorsal fins. Many can change color in seconds. Next. The many-bar goatfish is known as moano. I've seen them change color right before my eyes. This is the same individual fish as the one in the previous slide. Please go back one slide for a moment. Thank you. You can see that the bars are not uniform in width. Some are thick, some are thin. It has red eyes and a horizontal line through the eye. Next. This is the yellow stripe goatfish, or Veke'a. It has a different name, different Hawaiian names based on the size or stage of life. The small ones are called, or the juveniles are called Oama. The adults are called Veke'a. They are quite common. You can see the yellow stripe on the side. The fins are clear or whitish, and it may or may not have the black spot. They're actually able to turn it off and on. Next. They also can change color. Notice the one in the back resting, the back right resting on the sand. It is also a yellow stripe goatfish. And these are easy to confuse with a yellow fin goatfish. Next. So this is a school of yellow fin goatfish, or vekeula. They have some yellow along the back, yellow fins, a yellow stripe from eye to tail, and they can turn entirely pink or red. Next. Okay, time for another review. If you're watching it during the scheduled time, please go to the chat so you can type in your answers. All right, let's see if you can also remember which fish are endemic. Next. The reef triggerfish. Hawaiian gregory, which is endemic. The Hawaiian white-spotted toby, also endemic. The Hawaiian sargent, endemic. The bird wrasse, and this is the initial phase. If you got that, that's extra credit. The yellow striped goatfish. The many-barred goatfish. The saddle wrasse. Now for some bonus slides. This is actually my favorite fish, my favorite species. It's the juvenile rock mover wrasse, which is also known as the dragon wrasse. They are among the most unusual fish on the reef. They have a filamentous fin extensions and peculiar swaying and twisting motions that help them to resemble drifting seaweed. And I love the markings around the eyes. It's particularly obvious in the slide, the photo on the right. Next. Here's a manta ray. They're among the largest of fishes. They feed on plankton. They lack a sting and do not touch or attempt to ride them. Next. Seahorses. They are rare and small. Most are blackish or brownish, but yellow ones are sometimes seen. The females are sometimes yellow. They're usually covered with filamentous algae and easy to overlook. The males bear the young. Next. Turtles. Turtles are reptiles and they breathe air like humans. So don't block their access to the surface if you happen to be in the water when they are. Both of these species of turtles, the hawksbill and the Hawaiian green sea turtles, are mentioned in the 4th verse of the Kumulipo, the Hawaiian creation chant. Both are protected by the Endangered Species Act. Only 20 to 25 hawksbill females nest every year compared to 500 to 800 Hawaiian green sea turtles. So please stay at least 10 feet away. Do not touch, feed, or attempt to ride. If they're entangled, it's okay to help. The hawksbill is known as the Honu'ea in Hawaiian. That's the one on the left. It's critically endangered. It has a narrow beak and head and overlapping scutes on the shell like roof shingles and serrated edges of the shell. It has 2 claws per flipper. The green, or the honu, is threatened. It has a rounded head, adjoining scutes like tiles, and smooth edges. It only has 1 claw per flipper. Now, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. The next slide is not for the squeamish, so close your eyes if you don't want to see it. Next. So I've had the occasion to help a few turtles that were in trouble. This turtle was found on the bottom of the ocean. Its neck and flipper were entangled in fishing line, so it couldn't come up to the surface to breathe. We first asked its permission, which it gave us, and then my buddy and I swam it into shore and called Noah. Noah eventually came, took it to a marine veterinarian. Its flipper was amputated, and as you can see on the right, it was released 6 months later and it survived. So please don't fish where you see turtles. If a turtle is injured, it's okay to help. Next. So if anyone wants to learn to do species and abundance surveys, I'd be glad to teach you. I'm a certified reef instructor. And if there's any time left, I will take questions for those of you who are watching this during its scheduled time in the retreat. Thank you very much.